We are live from Melbourne to Madrid, episode 6 with my amigo, Luis Andres Marino. What a name that is. And we were very invested recently because Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal, their paths aligned not against each other, but with each other. They were in the Laver Cup, an inaugural tournament. And it was nice to see them buddy up as opposed to rivaling each other. Obviously, there was a lot of talk with Nadal 16 Grand Slams approaching Federer's 19. Luckily, Federer won 2 to kind of stay. So it's still a margin, but that imagine if Federer didn't win any Grand Slams. The Grand Slam count, Nadal would be 1 away, and he would get that because of Roland Garros. So, I'm basically, let's just get it straight. I'm a Federer supporter. I'm a Nadal supporter as well, but primarily Federer. Lewis is primarily Nadal. And I was wondering, Lewis, Federer and Nadal, they pulled off a collaborative win, a close win. Nadal lost, but Federer beat, I think it was Kyrgios. What did you make of the Laver Cup in general?
Yeah, you've covered a lot of it already, but I think the format is great. That's probably, for me, that's the most important thing, because if this was as they've clearly thought about it for the long term, not just for this year. This could be, as Roger Federer said, after his win during the trophy presentation, he was like, time will tell how big this will become, and I'm already confident this is going to be, I don't know, just it reminded me a lot of the Ryder Cup in golf between America against Europe, and that become within the sport of golf. So this same for tennis, really.
Yeah, it's a very different type of tournament, isn't it? Like you're mentioning the Ryder Cup there in golf. It's a Europe versus the rest of the world format. So you had with Europe, was it Thomas Berdych buddying up with Nadal and Federer? And it's not like Nadal and Berdych have been on great terms in the past either. Like I remember a particular match, Nadal, who doesn't complain too much on court, but he was unhappy with a particular umpire call in a Berdych match. But then again, I might be thinking of Soderling. Nadal and Soderling didn't mix well. It's like oil and water, you know what I mean? But I mean, that's the thing with this concept, though, that you have to be careful of. Like with Europe and the rest of the world, what you don't want is if these top players like Federer and Nadal if they can't put their competitiveness aside to become team members. Obviously, Nadal and Federer they're basically friends on the outside, right? They've played so much together, but you always have these situations where, there can be a little bit of tension within the team, not just in the Laver Cup, but in the Davis Cup. You can have tension as well. Do you reckon that could be an issue going forward?
Could be. Hopefully it isn't, but yeah, Berdych you mentioned. I couldn't see him because the thing is for these rules. So you had to play. Yeah, I think did everyone play a doubles? No, because Dominic Thiem didn't play doubles, unless I remember incorrectly. I mean, we could look it up now, but
yeah.
Or maybe you can look it up at lavercup.com. I watched just about all the games, and off the top of my head, I can't remember Dominic Thiem playing. With Berdych, though, he's always sort of, I don't know. I've always found him a bit of a special character, just like wanting to be very isolated. But I think the thing is, like, even if 2 players don't get along, I mean, it's a squad of 6. So they would find a way to, sort of avoid if there's any bad feelings between 2 players. But yeah, I mean, it's a very sort of unlikely chance that will happen, I think.
What's the point of the coaches, though? Like, you have John McEnroe with the rest of the world team, and I forgot who the other one was, but it was a legend of the sport
John
as
Wall.
well. Yeah, is there a point? Like, wouldn't it be better to just have captains of each team? Like, make Federer captain of Europe, and make, I don't know, Kyrgios was in there. Make someone from the rest of the world team captain of that team. Make it more about the players as opposed to these past legends. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, they could, but I mean, again, Federer, he spoke about the future of this trophy, but also why uh, he contributed to creating this trophy, and he wanted to honor past players. So I think that sort of clears up any doubts as to who the captains will be and who it honors as well. Rod Laver, of course. Um, I thought it was a good idea to create the tournament. Maybe maybe he's probably right that they don't honor past players enough. But I mean, at the same time, it's because you, Roger, and Rafa and Novak are present at this time, and you're sort of,
Mm.
covering all the great players from the past. But I'm happy with the creation of this tournament. It kept me on the edge of my seat because most of them went to tie breaks, super tie breaks, first to 10 points. And it could have gone either way, to be honest. I mean, Europe were the favorite team, but it came down at the end of the day to that last match because Fridays were worth 1 point, Saturdays 2 points, and Sundays 3. I thought it was really interesting and kept you intrigued and entertained.
It was definitely entertaining, but there's another issue here of tennis scheduling and the amount of tournaments that they have to compete in already. So the Laver Cup, that's an edition after the US Open, not a Grand Slam, of course, but it's still a tournament which top players go in already having exerted their body to the limit in a tennis calendar. Having another edition of a tournament, might not suit some players. But then again, if the money's good and if the initiative good, I mean, if it has Laver Cup, right, the bearing of the name being Rod Laver, it's probably good to be assigned with that. I guess the thing that's going for the Laver Cup is the fact that there's doubles, there's singles, right? So it's not like all these players have to play a certain amount of single matches. No, they mix it up so you can stay fresh. I think that's vital in a tournament like this. So, what do you
No, just to
think of?
yeah.
Yeah,
No, just to clear up, so Burdage could have avoided playing with Rafa because I looked it up and Dominic Thiem didn't play doubles. So with regards to the previous question as to players maybe not getting along, that could be sorted out. Yeah, go with your question now. I just wanted to clear that up.
no, that's fine. Thanks for clearing that up. I was just wondering, do you think the Laver Cup is a good thing in terms of the scheduling for tennis, given that there's so many tournaments already?
Maybe it could have been. So they're keeping the same dates for next year in Chicago. Um, I mean, to sort of, I guess, 2 weeks was it after the US Open? Maybe, just maybe, it was a bit too early after a Grand Slam because Grand Slams, if you're one of those them players that get to the end of the tournament, to
Yeah,
late
exactly.
stage of the second week, that could be fixed. Um, doesn't mean they would have to get rid of the whole. I think the tournament will stay. It will just. Um, they spoke about organization. I thought it was organized perfectly, to be honest. But speaking in terms of the dates, I mean that could be changed. So I think they're probably keeping it the same because it was a success this year. Um, only shame, I guess, was that no, I think that maybe this is related with the dates, possibly. Although Del Potro we always speak of him coming back from injuries. Really, I mean, poor guy. He seems to be on the comeback all the time. But he did go through what 2 5-setters in the US Open before losing to Rafa.
Mm.
No, the poor guy. I mean, he beat Tim in 5, Roger in 5,
Yep.
if I remember all. Yeah, and then had Rafa. Um, so he had to pull out from the tournament for Team World. But I think that could be fixed. You know, if in the next coming years they see that they need more rest, they can just.
Yeah, and just to clear up, Federer beat Del Potro in the US Open in a 4-setter match. So it was 7-5 first set, Del Potro, 6-3 Roger Federer second set, 7-6 tie break, 10-8, and 6-4 Del Potro. So yeah, it's he had a bit of a tough run, Del Potro. I mean, good on him for coming back from injury, but wasn't easy.
No, he surprised a lot of people. You know, I mean, you sort of on his prime, you expect him to be up there because he's a great player, and he's proved that he's won a Grand Slam. Um, yeah, he pulled out from the Labour Cup, understandably. So maybe if they pull this tournament back, or this recognition to Rod Laver, if they pull it back maybe a couple of weeks, it will give players more of a chance to recover and be on their prime. Because at the end of the day, I think we all want to see, or I want to see this trophy really become the closest thing to Grand Slam as possible. And I thought they competed for most of the matches. I mean, there were perhaps maybe a few points where won and stuff, but Kyrgios, for instance, I mean, he took it to Federer big time, and he was disappointed after losing. I'm like, you have, he's such a good player. He had that mentality for every other tournament. I'm sure. I'm still hopeful that he will have that mentality eventually, but he's got to find it because he's got the talent.
That's true. He's definitely got the talent, and sometimes you have to deliver on that talent as well. Talking about a talented person in another field, in the field of pro wrestling, we're about to have on our very first guest on from Melbourne to Madrid. Nick Berry is a pro wrestler in Down Under, so in the Australian scene, not in Madrid.
No, we're not known for this.
Yeah, but, we'll get him on the line and talk some wrestling. So I'm going to invite him. This is exciting. Our very first guest.
Let's do it.
We'll get him on and see what
He
happens.
actually
Lewis,
went.
sorry, what's that, Lewis?
No, he actually went to D-Lar.
Yeah, so he went to the same secondary school as us. So which is interesting in itself. I wonder how the 3 hangout system will work. Like one guest will be there. I don't know. So it'll be interesting to see how it works. So we're just waiting for him he'll come on soon. We'll talk about, what it takes to be a pro wrestler. Because a lot of people think, even though it's predetermined, you still put your body through the test of training and
Just look at Rio.
exactly.
Must be pumped up about that.
Have you seen any wrestling events, Lewis? Pro wrestling live?
I've already, yeah, times. I've watched the Mayweather Pacquiao. Anthony Joshua, I watched his highlights, from that win at Wembley. Obviously, McGregor and Mayweather. UFC, I'm sort of still trying to watch them. No, they deserve credit for what they do. For me, it was always more of a mental side, how you approach your opponent that I guess pulled me back from the sport or wasn't as so.
Yeah. So still trying to get Nick Berry on the line. We actually had to delay it a little bit because he was working. But that's the nature of the beast. Sometimes these things happen.
Yeah, generous of him to come on.
Definitely, and I think our listeners will like to know that we have a few more guests in the pipeline. I don't want to reveal them, but they will be
It's
coming
just
soon.
teasing now,
Yeah,
listeners.
teasing. Well, Lewis knows what I'm talking about. So we've got a few big guests planned.
Yeah, I'm teasing. I'm teasing a bit too.
Just ganging up on nah. But again, this is a bit of a trial as well. So just to everyone out there, like this is the first time we're trying 3 people on the one stream. So Nick Berry's indicated that he's ready. So I'm just waiting. I've invited him a few times, just waiting for him to go online, I guess. But it's always good, isn't it, Lewis, to see someone following, a passion, like something unique, such as pro wrestling. Like we've had friends who have done different things, like a pilot, right? Joseph Beadle. That's interesting. And then we have, a pro wrestler coming from secondary school. So, it's quite cool. So I'd love to have him on. Bit of a delay here, I think. Look, when he does come on, I'll uh, I'll let everyone know. But for the moment, we'll keep moving. He'll come on soon. So as we we're talking about Lewis the tennis, Rafael Nadal. So I don't think he's going to be without. I think he's going to be without his uncle Tony, right? His uncle Tony is going to take care of the academy side. Carlos Moya is going to kind of take over the reins a little there. What do you think Moya can add to Nadal's game that he doesn't have already?
I wish he could improve his serve. That would just lift Rafa even to a bigger level. And he's been serving better recently, so I think the effects are maybe already in there. We just haven't maybe spoken about it because Uncle Tony is still there, or was. But I think Moya has already been sort of behind the scenes. He's already been doing something. As I pointed out, the serve, and I think more things will come. Obviously, you have to give him time to implement all these. But in terms of Rafa competing year in year out for titles, that's not going to change because he's just too good a player. But I understand Uncle Tony making that decision. What a person to run an academy. You definitely want to go and play there, right? As a young kid. So it's the right decision.
All right, Lewis, we've got our guest on the line. He is Nick Berry. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Lewis, this is Nick Berry, as we've been speaking about, pro wrestler down under. You've just...
Sorry, just down under and down on my bottom corner. Just noticed.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
So, Nick, you've just come back from pro wrestling practice. How was that?
It was great. Yeah, no, I loved it. I went up to a Sydney trip up in wrestled for Wrestling Go. Did 3 shows up in there. We did 1 show in the CBD in Sydney, 1 show in Newcastle, and then another one in Western Sydney. So it was fantastic. Decent sized crowds up there. Really good promotion. PWA is sort of like their main one with Nui Pro as well. But yeah, they're doing really good things there, especially the PWA training school. I can't thank them enough for hosting us up there for 3 training sessions. Very, very good trainers with Mick Moretti, Shaz McKenzie. Who else? We have Robbie Eagles and Madison Eagles, just phenomenal, talented people.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it sounds like, I talked to you, I think it was about a year ago or so on another show of mine. And
Yep.
You were really invested in, becoming the best you could be in pro wrestling. And that was something I really respected from you. You're really passionate about what you're doing. I think that's great. And I think that will take you places, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on the show, because with wrestling, you see these people like Vince McMahon, Triple H, these guys who just live and breathe pro wrestling, not WWE, just wrestling in general. Is there kind of like a brotherhood in terms of like the pro wrestling scene?
Most definitely. And that's sort of like where the term brother comes from. Like we are all brothers. Like you all sort of pretty much, when you're on the road together, you're living with each other 24/7. You're wrestling with each other. You're training with each other. You're eating with each other. You're working out with each other. You're doing everything. You're spending more time with each other than less time with your family. So when that happens, you have this camaraderie, and the boys just sort of get together. It's like a sporting vibe, but if sport was a touring sort of thing. So, for example, I'm a huge Essendon fan, but if Essendon was having 5 games a week, every week of the year, they would be probably a lot closer than what they are now, even though they probably train together 4 to 5 times a week. So, but you're making town, so you're in the buses together or you're driving up. So it's definitely, there is such a thing as a brotherhood in wrestling for sure.
How would you say it benefits you? In what way?
Well, you're constantly learning from each other, so you're helping each other out. So you might be a better technical wrestler than your mate, and he might be better at high flying, or he might be a powerhouse, or whatever sort of different style that you offer. You can help each other in that aspect. One might be a very good character or a very good promo, so he can help you with character ideas, or standing in front of the camera and knowing what points to hit and when have your pauses and when not to talk too quick, when to speed it up, and vice versa in the ring. So you can definitely help each other out in that aspect. And then, yeah, like you're constantly learning from all different aspects that you can offer. So I've gone overseas and I've trained with the Storm Wrestling Academy run by Lance Storm. And I've trained at OVW recently this year. And the head coach there is Rick Rogers and Matt Capitale. So I got to learn off a couple of those trees. And basically what I'm trying to do is get a little bit from here, get a little bit from there, a little bit from there, and put them all together. So my next step is I really want to crack into Japan. So that'd be Canada, Australia, US, and then next step's Japan. And then after that, hopefully get into the English scene. So once I've got that, it's kind of like building a puzzle. Once you get all the pieces, you can sort of map out who exactly you want to be and what style you are. So I want to be that real mixed hybrid style, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And has your in-ring persona changed at all? Like, I've watched a few of your performances, and you can tell you've really improved. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to have like a people-pleasing type of personality in the ring. Like, fans really warm to you as a Lewis. You're laughing.
No, the fans are like, well, he's pleasing his opponent.
No. As in, like, for instance, John Cena, right? So John Cena, he's someone that people really adore to, but sometimes they can also hate as well. But a lot of people love him. That's why he's the face of the company. But I've noticed athletically, Nick, your performance has really improved. Your explosiveness as well. So like going on the rope, jumping, and also just the general your kicks as well. Mm-hmm. Those kicks are really. Are they difficult to learn? Like all those kind of acrobatic moves you do? Definitely.
It helps that I spent, 4 or 5 years doing karate before wrestling. So I had that martial arts style before. So the timing of a kick, getting the right speed and knowing when to stop the kick or pull a kick or pull it harder or like whatever you want to do with that definitely helps in my style. And that's why I definitely throw a lot of kicks. And I like that technical sound base, but with a lot of strikes too. And as far as character-wise goes, currently, I am the MCW Tag Team Champion in the Brat Pack.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you, which is Melbourne City Wrestling. And that is a totally different character that I portray there than the character that I have in the other companies that I wrestle for, like Battle Championship Wrestling, Warzone Wrestling Australia, Gippsland Pro Wrestling, Platinum, and now Wrestling Go in Sydney. So I've sort of gotten to use all these different character ideas in different companies and sort of form them in. But that Melbourne City Wrestling one is definitely in a league of its own. And we're doing some really good things there at the moment. So I'm just happy with how things are going there.
Absolutely. And Lewis, did you have a few questions for Nick?
Well, it's hard to get.
Oh, we've lost him.
Which
the thing about this stream is that that because he's from Madrid and I'm from Melbourne, or we're from Melbourne, Nick, that the stream can sometimes lapse a little bit.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, but
well, yeah.
But yeah,
I hear you guys well.
we've got you back on, Lewis.
I think I was from the beginning, but yeah, I could hear you guys well. Okay, before you lose me again, just I don't know which character, man, do you really like out of all of them? Because you seem to cover quite a few.
I really enjoy what I'm doing at Melbourne City Wrestling. They've sort of given us the ball and we're just sort of running with it. And the Brat Pack is such a unique thing. I don't think anyone's sort of ever done anything like that in a wrestling sense, where we're kind of like high school jocks / bogans / just like these sort of like deros that just like you're top athletes, but you're so immersed into yourself that everything is just oblivious apart from what you're doing, and it's really fun to just feed off the crowd and feed off the hatred that we get there as well. But yeah, I really like that aspect of the footy side, because I did play football AFL here for so many years, and I've sort of taken that aspect of like that footy dickhead and brought it into wrestling. And we have a lot of fun with it. Like there's been a couple of times where I've actually put on a real football boot and then kicked someone in the head with it. So it's a cool little dynamic that we do.
That's original.
Yeah.
Oh. No, that's really good to hear.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you're making really good progress, Nick. And as a tag team champion, obviously you have single matches and you have tag matches as well. What are the main differences apart from there being more competitors in a tag team match?
Mm-hmm. Well, in a singles match, you got 3 people in the ring. You've got a referee and you've got you and your opponent. In a tag match, you've got 5. You've got the 2 tag teams and the referee. So there's more bodies in the ring. There's more ring space awareness that you have to think about before doing any sort of move. But tag team dynamics, I'm really enjoying, whether I'm as the Brat Pack or Mitch Waterman, my tag partner, are in BCW, Battle Championship Wrestling, coming up with their tag tournaments next month. And we're not as the Brat Pack over there, so we're sort of like that high-flying, striking dynamic, sort of good guys. But yeah, tag team wrestling it was an acquired taste of me at first. I never really thought I would be a tag team wrestler, and once I got put into that tag team, I haven't looked back. I absolutely love it, and it's really a big passion of mine at the moment. And I really want the Australian wrestling scene to thrive, and I want the tag team division to become something really special here. And I think we're really working towards that at the moment.
Is it hard to choreograph the moves though, because you're working with, so say in a tag team, right? Say if you had Nick Berry against Luis Andres Marino, right? So Luis being the other host on this show.
I tapped out before it starts, mate.
Well, Nick actually does the crossface move, Luis. So he could probably tap you out with that, and myself included. But one of the things though about a tag team match is that, yeah, you're versing one tag team partner. Say if Nick is versing Lewis, but then Lewis tags in myself, and you're still the nominated tag person in the ring. Yeah. Is it hard to adjust when another opponent comes in the ring.
For sure. Like you've going off what you're saying there, if I've been wrestling Lewis for a couple of minutes, that's a different style, and he's a different character, and he might have a different style of wrestling to what you would have. So instantly you've got to transition and go, okay, well now I'm wrestling someone else. I've got to change my game plan. What have I done that's worked for me here? What haven't I done? Have I wrestled you before? What can I remember from the past there? So instantly your brain's ticking over, like, what am I going to do next? And you're more thinking about what's he possibly going to do to me. So if he's going to go for something, if I know your moveset and I know that you're going to throw a big boot, for example, I know to get the hell out of there. And if Lewis was in there and his go-to submission is a crossface as well, well then I know how to get out of that, and I know how to, if I see him going for it, I know where to put my arm away or something like that. But yeah, tag teams, you definitely have to think on the fly, and you have to know your opponent. So Mitch and I, we study our opponents before our matches, and we sort of get a game plan going of what could potentially happen and what are we going to do to stop that.
Yeah, because John, could I ask one?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Yeah.
You couldn't, I guess. It's not as simple as, Mitch, your partner. Yeah, you go with one opponent and him with the other, like you would within the match at some stage.
Sorry, what was that?
So like, it's not as easy as you and your teammate Mitch saying, "I'll go with that opponent and I'll go with the other one."
Yes.
From the other tag team, like you would choose
tags
a good time to change opponents.
Yeah. That's why that's up to you to do your own research on what that tag team is that you're wrestling.
Yeah, cool.
It's very much almost similar to a singles match. Like you would obviously study your opponent if you were going to have a one-on-one singles match, but now you just have to study two opponents.
So you rely a lot on intuition built in through what is actually going on, whereas in a singles match you can have a little bit more awareness before the match, or does it just change depending on circumstance?
It does change depending on circumstances. Like you could go from anywhere. Like a singles match can be very dynamic for whatever type of singles match that you're doing. There's multiple different types of wrestling matches that you can have. But yeah, like the tag in itself is one of your biggest moments. So you need to structure when you put those tags in, what crowd reaction you're going to get from those tags. So if you're versing a babyface team, what's the crowd going to do when they get that hot tag, and how are you going to get to that hot tag spot before they blow their comeback? So you need to put all these things into your mind before you start this match of, what if I do something, what are they going to do to cut that off? If they hit me with something, what am I going to do to get out of that pinning predicament? If I'm in a bad position, how am I going to get Mitch back in there? We also have in the third member of the Brat Pack, Avery. So she definitely helps us along the way, and she's been a very, very good good thing to the Brat Pack as far as like helping us with getting victories. Coming into the team, she's gotten that heat from the crowd as well. Like we're very hated in MCW at the moment, so it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's kind of really interesting because it's kind of diametrically opposed to your personality. Like you're quite a presentable guy, like you're quite a nice guy, whereas the tag team is kind of feeding the other way. But I guess it's also part of being a good performer to have that variety and skill set to be one persona and to act another. Did you transition into that role seamlessly, or did it take a bit of time?
It did take a bit of time. I'm portraying someone that is not me, so I have to get into the mood for that. If you say, for example, Undertaker, everyone knows that his real name is Mark. He doesn't walk down the street in his Undertaker gear. So he probably has to mentally prepare himself to get into that character. And he's definitely a different guy backstage than what he is out in the ring. I've never met him or anything, but I'm just giving an example there. So your character has to be 100% flawless at every time when you're out there. And to find that character is very hard. So there's such things as like promo class that we run at Vicious Pursuit, which is a wrestling school in South Melbourne run by Carlo Cannon, and Crackerjack actually runs the promo class down there, so he does really well, and he's helped me a lot in this past year as far as like learning off him from working together, which we actually beat him and Lockie Hendricks for the tag team titles back in June. So I learned a lot of things from him while working with him, and then promos and character development. He's been very helpful there. So yeah, like I guess what I'm trying to get the point over is that who you are as a person can be turned up to 11, which is a figure of speech that some people like to say is like your best character persona is you just turned up all the way, or it's completely not you and you're able to find that character, find its backstory, and know what he would do in all these circumstances. So me as a babyface for those other promotions that I've listed that's not MCW, that is me turned up to 11. And then me as the Brat Pack Nick Berry, that's a completely different person. So I like having that balance. It's very much like learning a different style of wrestling. So I went to Canada, I went to the US, I want to go to Japan now. So I'm just taking little pieces and I'm molding them into me.
Mm-hmm. And Lewis, as like a watcher of like when you've watched pro wrestling matches, what are kind of the personas that you admire? Do you admire that kind of Brat Pack Nick Berry feel that he was referring to being the antagonist of the audience, or do you prefer the baby type faces?
So I've always liked to be hated as well, and I know what I mean. The sport tennis has been my biggest strength, and they didn't like me too much because of my drop shots. So he explains it. Really intrigued, man. I mean, and to be able to do all those different characters, it's quite a talent in itself. And he also sounds, you sound very open to even picking up more characters, I would think. Are you interested in that, or are you happy with the ones you have?
I mean, I'm happy with how I'm going at the moment, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't settle for what I'm doing at the moment. I'm always keen for new ideas and new things that could potentially increase what I'm doing. But yeah, for the moment, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing as the Brat Pack. But you're always sort of like getting ideas from anything, whether it's character ideas from movies, character ideas from other wrestlers. Anything, like just any sort of character you can pick little pieces from and sort of go, oh, okay, I can kind of see how that worked for him. And then it's just about making it for you. What would you do in this situation, sort of thing?
And do you take a lot of, I guess, collect opinions from people when they see a character that you're building up, or is it all about you? Like, okay, I'm happy with this character that I build up, or do you also take in feedback?
But yeah, no, I'm always open to feedback. As soon as your match is over, like all feedback is good feedback. Some opinions are like flavors of ice cream. You might like chocolate, someone might like strawberry, someone might like vanilla, but everyone likes ice cream and we all have opinions. So whether or not you completely agree with vanilla or you completely agree with strawberry, you can still take a little bit from all of them. And you might say, okay, well, that makes sense. I can see how that works for you, but for me, that personally doesn't work. Or vice versa. Hey, that makes sense. I'm going to start using that. So it's up to you if you want to take that on board, or if you want to just say, okay, that does make sense, and I will note that for like put in my back pocket sort of thing.
See, that's a great mentality to have, because I sometimes fail at this myself. Like when I look at YouTube comments and say just social media comments, like say it can happen to anyone really. Like Lewis was saying, even in sport, in tennis, like, there's people who are going to go against you and people who are going to go for you. And sometimes you can get wrapped too much in the against side, but then it can go the other way where you get too wrapped up in the positive that you can't have room for improvement if you don't also hear the negative. So sometimes,
sure.
Yeah.
And if everyone's saying, hey, good match, like I really enjoyed it, then you're not really learning anything from someone just saying, hey, I liked what you did. So I like to say, what should I do better to improve, or name one thing that I didn't do as well as what you thought that I should have done, or something like that. So always, in the back of your mind what worked and what went well, and in the back of your mind what didn't work, but you might not always click those things. So you always should say, what should I improve on, instead of what went well. So that's how you learn, for me at least.
I
can't think of
Sorry, go on, Lewis.
No, I can't think of a better approach, really, because it's very comfortable to again, anything to, if youve done something well, just stick with it, and instead, to ask other people and be open to opinions. I think there's no better way to approach it. So keep that up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess that's the nature of all knowledge, isn't it? Like, you can't just rely on yourself. You need to rely on others. And, we're human beings, we're social animals, so we learn from each other. And especially in a dynamic such as pro wrestling, where you have all these different dynamics of not just the persona, but the different fighting styles that each opponent can possess. Is there a particular style, Nick, that suits you when you're facing an opponent? For instance, a high flyer, because you can do some more entertaining things, or someone who's quite heavy and strong and they can say, lift you. And I don't know if you had a preference in terms of style of fighting.
Oh, can I also add? Sorry, because I think it's kind of related. Does the character affect the style?
Yes, definitely. So to answer both questions in one, I really enjoy the technical sound style. So your sort of like old English style, or someone on more of like a WWE relatable level, someone like a Tyson Kidd or a Daniel Bryan. I've watched hundreds of their matches, and AJ Styles, like what they can do technically sound in the ring, I really love, but I also really love character work. And at the end of the day, no wrestling fans typically remember all the moves. They always remember the moments. So if your character can bring these awesome moments that are rememberable, then they will always go back to those. They don't always go back to what you did X, Y, and Z in the ring. So as a sporting aspect, I definitely treat wrestling as a sport, and I love it for that. But it also is an entertainment aspect. So you do have to have a good balance of both. So for me personally, I really like a technically sound match. At the same time, especially for the Brat Pack, I do like having very character-based matches as well, because I find for the Brat Pack character easier to get crowd reactions from a character-based match than going out there and trying to have a balls to the wall sort of steal the show type match.
Yeah, and that's the thing about chess as well. Like, some top players consider it a sport, but then on the other hand, they consider it an art form. And whereas not WWE, pro wrestling in general has that concept where it's entertainment, it's theater, but it's also a sport because you're getting in there, you're being competitive as a fighter. So in terms of
the result is not decided before it starts, right? Because that's sort of a rumor, or maybe WWE got.
Yeah.
Don't you think, guys? Like, for you, that's not, you compete and go out for the result.
I'm competing for which one?
So, like, WWE used to get some criticism in terms of, we know who's going to win, or the result has already been decided. That doesn't happen with you, does it? Or
it's professional wrestling, wherever you go, is the same. So it is a mixture of everything put together. It has all the acrobats, it has all the stage, it has all the character base, it has all the drama, it has all the sport, it has all the realism, it has all the hard hits, and it's put everything into one. And that's what professional wrestling is. Whether you call it professional wrestling or whether you call it sports entertainment like they do in WWE, it's the same thing wherever you go, but it's just different flavors of ice cream. That's all wrestling is in a nutshell.
So do you find that some opponents, not to mention specifics, because with different personas, you have different attitudes of competitiveness as well. Like some guys can hit hard, not because they want to intentionally hit you hard, but that's kind of their style. Like I can think of in the WWE, Sheamus.
Yep.
In the WWE, he hits hard.
Yep.
Whereas some guys hit quite lightly. How do you prepare for someone that you know is going to hit hard?
You feel it out there. Like you get an adrenaline rush no matter what you're doing, performing in front of a live audience. And when someone really smacks you, it sort of wakes you up, and you can feel it. Like for me, I don't mind that. I like to feel the hits because I'm so immersed into the match and it's real. And I'm feeling these hits, and like it fires you up inside. So when you come back at them, you're coming back the same. But for me, I personally like to work a light. I like to be adaptable to every situation, but I also would like to be known as someone that's very safe in the ring, and can take care of your opponent. So the idea of, let's say, a wrestling move is to make it look as impactful as possible with causing as least amount of damage as possible. Because at the end of the day, on an Australian level, you can pretty much do this every weekend if you're working for sort of multiple companies. But on a WWE level, they're wrestling a lot more than us, sort of 4 to 5 nights a week, if not more. So when you're having those hard-hitting matches every single night, your body physically can't do that. Whereas a UFC, you might be fighting about, 10 to 15 times a year, if that. So you can take a lot more of a toll in those fights. But if they were to do their same fighting style 300 plus times a year, your body physically couldn't do that.
No, and that's where supplementation comes in as well, right? Like, it's important to be on top of your supplementation. I know, Nick, from talking to you previously, that you're quite big on not necessarily dieting, or maybe yes for dieting, but particularly with supplementation, like you need to treat your body well.
Yeah.
I was wondering what kind of things you do in that aspect. What kind of supplements would you take to enhance your performance?
Sure.
Or to recover?
Sure, yeah. So I typically hit the gym around 4 to 5 times a week. I try to get to wrestling training at least once a week. And then your wrestling shows every weekend, typically on a Saturday, sometimes on a Friday. So in order to get yourself prepared for all of that, you have to look good and be in shape all year round. Wrestling isn't a seasonal sport. So when you're doing that, you have to be eating clean throughout the entire day. So typically my day starts off with about 4 or 5 egg whites. I choose egg whites because they're less calories than having the yolk in there. I pan fry tuna, and I have it on, have like an egg white scrambled omelet sort of thing with tuna in there. And then I have like 1 or 2 pieces of whole grain toast just for your carbohydrates there, and then half an avocado smashed up. So you're getting good fats, good carbs, and good protein in there. After that, I do like to sort of keep that lean look on me, so I won't eat too many carbohydrates throughout the day. So it is pretty boring, but it's pretty much just chicken and broccoli for about 2 to 3 meals before dinner, snacking on protein bars in between and almonds and stuff. And then I go to the gym. Straight after the gym, you're probably going to have a protein shake or some sort of like protein bar before your refeed meal at dinner time, whether that's like a pasta or something like that, just to get those carbs back into your quick release. And that's where you can sort of step away from those brown rices and get it like a basmati rice or a white rice, because you want that, you want to restore those energy levels straight away. And then typically I'll have a creatine as well. Creatine, just basically you have 5 grams of that. It's enabling you to, I guess you could say, if your max on a bench press was 100 kilos for 4 reps, while you're taking creatine, you might be able to push an extra set, or you might be able to push an extra rep every set. and you do retain more water weight, but I do find that you do feel a little bit stronger and it delays your fatigue a little bit. But I don't take any sort of illegal supplements or anything like that. It's purely just creatine, and I take multivitamins, vitamin C's, I take fish oil tablets, what else? Glucosamine, and that's pretty much it. Just your protein and creatine, really.
Yeah, I mean, those are the two really important ones, aren't they? Because protein works by recovering your muscle fibers after a tough session. And then the creatine is a supplement which can enhance, well, it's usually for the explosive sense of movement, as you were explaining. So that's more anaerobic, whereas aerobically, well, I assume, well, this is an interesting discussion in itself, isn't it? Because there's anaerobic moves you have to do in wrestling, but at the same time, you have to have the endurance to be able to withstand the duration of a match. What do you do on the aerobic side, Nick?
Aerobically, I do about I do about once or twice a week. I'll go for like a good 30-40 minute run. And that just helps me prepare. But I also do a lot of body weight training. So while I'm at the gym, it's not always just smashing out weights and clanging and banging with the iron in the gym. So it's like I'll do a lot of body weight sort of stuff. So it's all implemented towards wrestling. At Vicious Pursuit, they're really good at that sort of like CrossFit type training, and everything they do is implemented to a match. So you might be doing a kettlebell swing straight after doing the battle ropes for a minute. So your arms are sore and your back sore and your chest is sore, everything's sore, but you still have to push out these explosive movements, which is like throwing a suplex, for example. They're all explosive, powerful movements, and you're fatigued while you're doing them. So you have to train towards that. For my own personal things at the gym, I'll just get like a bench, for example, and I'll do like bunny hops. So bunny hops over there for like 10, drop down, do 10 push-ups, then do it for 8, then do 8 push-ups and vice versa. And you do sets of that so your body's getting used to being pushed to its level and then having to keep on going as well. Squats are another one. I recently did a tryout for New Japan Pro Wrestling. And we started that tryout camp just with 200 squats straight away, and then into 100 wheelbarrow push-ups. So they gave us 50 push-ups to begin with, and then we're meant to swap over, and then with your partner, and then he would do the 50. But they changed on the fly, like things do happen in the wrestling sense, where you're not expecting something to happen, and boom, there it is. So then we had to go, okay, now you've done your 50, you're going to do another 50. There's no swaps, so you did 100 straight, and you've got to mentally get yourself through that. And that's all it is. Like, physically, your body can get through most things. It's your brain telling you that you can't. So you have to push through that and know that you'll be fine.
And I know Lewis is quite big on, endurance-based activities. Like I know he's done a few marathons as well. So he's very good when it comes to the endurance side. Lewis, how did you build up your endurance? Like, I think that's something you've always had naturally. But would you take any particular supplementation to aid like your running, or would it just be kind of something that you just work on?
I'd like to think I've had it naturally, as you pointed out, Jono.
The natural athlete.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is mental, as he said, because I'm going to have, they're only 10 kilometers, but I mean, for now, I'm going to test myself on speed. So I'm aiming for 40 minutes, 10 kilometers, more or less, which is brutal for me, I guess. Maybe Usain Bolt could do that. Yeah. No, well, because we've just been, it's not really professional, right, at all, but it is, I don't know, I'm not sure about Australia, but in Europe, it's becoming like really sort of popular just to go out and do marathons, big marathons in cities. And so we ran one in April, and it was a half marathon, 21 Ks. And just hitting up a lot of the gym, mate, for now. Supplements, I might start having the same as what he did if it works that well. But I have heard of it, and alimentation as well is very important. So it's just a combination of everything. I don't think you don't want to have an excess of anything. It's just combining it all together, and put that, combine it with your mentality, and you'll get there. But I wouldn't say it's down to exactly one thing. You don't want to be obsessed with one specific thing. I think it's a combination of a lot of things.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely, because there's also that element of when you're doing aerobic-based activities, you've got the lactic acid that builds up through your body as well. So you need to be able to flush that out too. And I guess that's something that Nick would face quite often. But that as more as it is a physical thing, it's a mental thing. The ability to tolerate that and work with the fatigue as well. There's a quote which I don't know who it's attributed to. People can look it up on Google, but it's I quite like this because I think it's true. It's fatigue makes cowards of us all, and I think that's so true because that works for so many different areas of fields, like from a mental perspective, right? If I'm very tired, I can slip up, stumble, not know my research or what I'm doing. You get figured out. What ways do you disguise fatigue, Nick, at all when it comes to wrestling?
Definitely. I won't show the fans that I am gassed out there. Most times I won't be gassed, but on those odd occasions when you're having that really sort of like hard-hitting or fast-paced match and you are really fatigued out there and you're really puffing it in, but you do have those fans like they're right there with you, and you're feeding off that adrenaline. It really makes you click into another gear. But I won't show them that I'm fatigued. I'm not going to stand there with my hands on my hips or holding down, like just breathing heavy. You got to keep on going. They're paying to watch you wrestle, and you're going to give them your all for that whole time that you're out there. So once you go through that curtain, you can drop to the floor if you're really that gassed, and then sort of breathe in after that. But while you're out there, at least you're giving you 100%.
Yeah, and I think that's been a general philosophy in pro wrestling, isn't it? Like, well, especially if I go to the WWE, sometimes I have this mentality of the show goes on, even if you have a bit of a small injury, which can work both ways. Sometimes you're not necessarily protecting the athlete. There's different circumstances involved, obviously, but so like because if someone's injured, right? But it depends what event it is. If it's a WrestleMania and you're hurt, which can happen, then the motivation to continue on is greater than if it wasn't a pay-per-view show. So I guess my question is to you, Nick. Do you have pay-per-view shows at, say, Melbourne City Wrestling, and do you kind
Definitely.
of? Okay, so would you plan for more spectacular moves as you would compared to an ordinary show?
So for Melbourne City Wrestling, they're all their shows are available on Vimeo. So if you just Google that up, you can subscribe to what they have, like kind of like a Netflix type subscription or a WWE Network type subscription, where you can go back and watch all of their shows from previous years and current years as well. But they do have their bigger shows of the year. So, for example, when was it? It was August. August was a huge month for Melbourne City Wrestling. They had 2 shows in 2 weeks and something like over 1,400 fans or something crazy like that came through the doors in 2 weeks. So you had Ballroom Brawl, which was at the Thornbury Theatre, which aesthetically is beautiful. And we packed that place out, and that was incredible. So you have that bigger show, and we had Will Ospreay in the main event of that against Adam Brooks, and they put on, to this day, my favorite match in Australian wrestling that I've seen live. And then 2 weeks later, you had some of the New Japan guys there as well for that big city show that we had. And we had Bad Luck Fale and Will Ospreay again. And then Will Ospreay actually versus Robbie Eagles and Adam Brooks in a triple threat match, which Adam went on to win both the PWA and the MCW Intercommonwealth Championships in the same night. So it was a very big moment for Australian wrestling and Melbourne City Wrestling as well, putting on these big, huge shows, because social media-wise, we're getting more interaction and we're getting more eyes on us. And then gate-wise, there's more fans coming through. So it's showing that what we're doing is working, but for those big shows, you do go out there and you do put on not a better performance or a bigger performance, but you sometimes might have more time out there. You might have less matches and you can have more time to go longer. But it's still, at the end of the day, no matter if it's 10 people or 1,000 people, I'm going to be giving it 100% because these people are paid to watch the show and they deserve that.
Yeah, it's not a, yeah, sometimes it's about that mentality of not letting off the gas, as you put it before. I think that's a great mentality to have, man, because that's something that your fans, and well, not just fans, even like people who don't like you, like they know that you give it your all the time. Like that's something that I've seen with wrestlers in the past. Like even if you don't necessarily like a person, doesn't mean you can't respect them for their work ethic. And I think I mean I've said it before, but I think you're outstanding in that regard. Like clearly your knowledge of supplementation and just your dedication in pro wrestling in general, it just shows that you know, the pro wrestling scene in Australia is getting bigger. There's more social media interaction, as you've said, and with that comes greater opportunity, be it overseas as well. I had a question for both of you. I'll start off with Lewis. What makes a good wrestling match?
Wow, well, talent, entertainment. I struggle to find two better words, really, because, you know, in terms of talent, you just they inspire you to and ask yourself, oh, like how have they done that? And then you go into behind the scenes. So well, it comes down to work and everything that's that's behind the scenes that you don't see. And then entertainment, because you don't want to see a boring fight. You know, you want to see things that, you know, you don't want it to be unpredictable. That's another word, I guess. I can't think of better words, to be honest. I'll probably leave it to Nick. You might describe it better than me, but for me, those are the three words.
No, you very much summarized it well there. Believability and being lost in the moment, I would say. For me as a wrestling fan, I like to be lost in a match. And when those times happen that you can just sort of sit back and just be there, visually sinking it all in, having those moments and those quick starts, those pauses, the crowd interaction, all those big moves where you can sort of like you have that big impact and you sort of just settle after that, so you can sink in as a fan what's just happened. That's to me what makes a good wrestling match. But you need that talent and you need that character base and you need to mold it in to really immerse into what the fans want. And that's just backing up from what Lewis is saying as a wrestling fan to what I'm saying as trying to put on a good wrestling match as a wrestler. But yeah, going back to thinking what I would like as a young kid, it was always sort of that sport orientated. I wanted to see that sort of technically sound match. And that's why I really grew up watching guys like Tyson Kidd and AJ Styles, because I loved what they were doing physically in the ring. But then my second favorite wrestler growing up was Sting, and he's a total character. So you have those different dynamics, and to me, they were both awesome. And like a guy like Batista as well, who's just this big jacked up guy, but he was so good on picking those moments.
I was going to say Batista is actually one of like the most, like he was my favorite, but I'll admit he's probably one of the most boring or simple. Maybe you have a different view on that, but
oh, you think so?
I thought
I was going to be Batista when I was growing up. I thought I was going to be 6'6" and jacked. I'm 5'10".
For me, he's always been my favorite, but I think from what I saw from other fans' reaction, I thought, well, they don't find him that special or original. He's just like the typical, you know, physical dude that can do like anything and just beat your head off. But I don't know, that he was my favorite. Like, just one question from me, because like to be in the WWE, or that's just.
Sorry, what was that?
I don't know. Would it be your dream to like be in the WWE or?
Yeah, of course. My definition of success in wrestling might be a little bit different to others. I really want the Australian scene to be seen for what it is. We are putting on fantastic shows at the moment, and not even just at the moment. It's been happening for years, but we just haven't had the recognition that it deserves. And that's why guys like Will Ospreay are noticing that, and he really wanted to come out to Australia and wrestle for us. And now that he's wrestled for Melbourne City Wrestling, he actually got a video going viral over social media saying that he wants to move to Melbourne full time and grow the company here and grow the scene here and give it the success that it deserves. But for me personally, I really want that to grow, but I also want my own self to grow. So whether that's WWE is my full-time living or anywhere else is my full-time living, my definition of success is saying that I can make a living through wrestling and I can support myself and support my family through it, and be able to save a little bit of money, because I've invested so much money into my training ever since I started at the age of 18 during high school. And to get me to the point where I am now, like, it'd be nice to get a little bit of money coming back through that as well. But yeah, WWE isn't the only goal. There's many goals, but it would be nice definitely to work for them for sure.
Absolutely, because you've got all these different avenues, haven't you? Like, it's not just, you know, WWE as the be all and end all. Like, you can still thrive in other organizations, such as in the Australian wrestling scene. And there's also another kind of secondary in terms of those bigger pro wrestling companies. It starts with T. What was it?
TNA.
TNA. TNA. Yeah, that's it.
TNA is now rebranded and it's under the Global Force Wrestling, and their show is now Impact Wrestling, their TV show. So
that's right.
It's run by Jeff Jarrett at the moment. I've actually got a friend that's doing some great things there. He's just recently been signed. He's a Storm Wrestling graduate as well. We're in the same class. Tony Cage.
Wow.
So he's
maybe
doing
he's not too far off.
He's a fellow Australian.
From getting in.
That would be lovely. I've always really enjoyed TNA growing up, so I was so stoked when I heard that he got the spot. And yeah, I mean, you can make a living from there. You can make a living in Ring of Honor, in WWE, or New Japan Pro Wrestling. New Japan is definitely the second biggest promotion in the world at the moment. They are doing some fantastic things, and they've just recently tapped into the US market as well with their LA show that they did. I think it was back in July. So yeah, big things are just happening in wrestling in general. And it's definitely about, if it hasn't already, is about to hit a huge boom. So what are the steps Pro Wrestling Australia needs to take? Obviously, they're making some very good steps, as their social media reach has indicated, like, keeps growing. What would you say are the things that need to take it to the next level? Definitely some sort of TV. We need some mainstream television, whether it's at Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 10, at, say, on a Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. or something like that, where you just get a good solid hour, whether that's Melbourne City Wrestling or whatever other company that can get that, will enhance the credibility of the Australian wrestling scene, and it will enhance the backing of the talent as well, because more eyes on you means that more people can come over, more people know what this scene is. Then there's more money going back into those promotions as well. So we're able to fly out talent, and then that just builds for a bigger crowd, a bigger audience, more wrestlers to come through the gates as well. So it's better for the wrestlers, it's better for the fans, and it's just better for wrestling in general to keep on growing.
Yeah, it's got to start, I think, at national level. Anything really, to be honest, because if you get that money in, then, as he said, they can travel out, and you also want fans from abroad. How good that would be, you know. Yeah,
and we do have that a little bit at the moment. Like, I've even noticed on my own social medias that I'm getting followers from the UK, I'm getting followers from Europe, I'm getting followers from Mexico, the States, Canada, and they're all having their eyes on wrestling here. So we are making leaps and bounds, but we just need to take it to that next step. And how we get to that next step, I'm not sure yet. But I think that it won't be too far off, because there's such good things going. And the internet at the moment, is going away from TV and it's going more onto online streaming. So that's why it's a great thing that we have that Vimeo on-demand service where we can offer all of our shows on there for a subscription for like, I think it's $10 a month. Similar to like a Netflix, you can go back and you can watch it all as a fan. And I would have loved to have had that growing up. Like if I was my age now, or say 15 years old, but in 2017 instead of 2011, man, I would have gone crazy on the amount of wrestling I could have watched. It would have just been phenomenal.
Kids have everything nowadays.
They do. And it's just going to get more.
Yeah, there's that element of being spoiled, isn't there? Well, it's, you know, that's just the nature of the beast. Like, you know, with like podcasts and everything, it's like people can listen to from Melbourne to Madrid, or they can listen to something else because there's so many options.
And podcasts are huge at the moment. There's so many wrestling podcasts out there, and I listen to them all the time while I'm meal prepping, while I'm doing my laundry, when I'm driving to a wrestling show or wherever. I'm always listening to a wrestling podcast because my theory is if I can listen to a wrestling podcast, A, I'm enjoying it, but B, I'm learning. And if I can learn one thing from a wrestling podcast, then essentially I just listen to an hour of my time where I could have been using that with music, or I could have been learning something from a podcast, and then that's only going to benefit me for the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you've got a lot of different avenues to learn from. It's not just like the in-ring experience. You can learn as you're. Well, I guess it goes for anything. You're watching footage, listening to audio, and all these different avenues. There, it's kind of like we're spoiled for choice as well. Like, but what types of wrestling podcasts would you listen to? Would you listen to Steve Austin? He had quite a popular one. What other ones are there? Smack Talk or something? It's another.
I'll even go through my podcast app at the moment. And I'll tell you guys the exact ones that I'm listening to because there's so many. But as far as like my weekly ones go, I love Bischoff on Wrestling. That's Eric Bischoff's podcast, former president of WCW. So he's got a lot of insight knowledge, and they sort of go back and talk about what was happening at that time, sort of thing, and even current day events. But he's just very intriguing to listen to. You've got Killing the Town with Storm and Cyrus, with obviously the Storm connection, being trained by Lance. I'm always learning. I learned from him. As my coach in an in-ring side and a professional side outside of the ring, and all the etiquette that you should have, business mindsets as well. But they're very much like a PhD for wrestling. So they definitely dive deep into wrestling. Colt Cabana's podcast, that's awesome. That's just sort of like just hop on the podcast like we're doing now and just no filter, no pre-planning, just talk for whatever you want to talk about and just have these conversations that you would have with another mate in a wrestling locker room. So they just put it on a podcast from there. The Ross Report, obviously Stone Cold's. Talk is Jericho is another good one. Then there's a couple of Aussie ones like Wrestle Radio Australia. I really enjoy that one.
To interrupt, sorry, Nick. Have you considered a podcast for Melbourne City Wrestling?
And that's just happened, actually. Funny you say that.
There you go.
Yeah, so if you guys go onto the Melbourne City Wrestling Facebook page, it just came out, I think, on Monday or Tuesday this week. I believe it's called Melbourne City Wrestling Rewind. Don't quote me on that because I could be wrong, but I did give it a listen and it's very good. They're sort of hyping up the next show coming up. We've got 2 back-to-back shows. On the Friday and Saturday I think it's the 13th and 14th of September. And basically they were just talking about the card for what's happening with those shows and who's coming down. Like we've got Travis Banks coming, who's the Progress Wrestling champion in England, and he's making huge waves over there. So it's really interesting what's going to happen there. Who else we got? We've got Matt Cross coming over. Basically, it's an invitational tournament, so it's like a round robin type thing. So once you lose, you're out of there. Once you win, you progress. So it's a 2-night thing, and I'm really looking forward to that. Sadly, we don't have the tag tournament, and it's just for a singles thing. But yeah, who knows? You might find the Brat Pack there.
No, awesome, man. And it's good that, you know, you're actually doing a podcast. I didn't actually know that happened this week. That was coincidental, but I just think it makes sense to have pro wrestling in Australia, you know, to expand the reach, especially to take advantage of the social media reach Melbourne City Wrestling has. Like, how many likes do they have on Facebook? I think there was like over 6,000.
Yeah, they're growing.
Something. Yeah, so it makes sense to do a podcast to get that reach, and hopefully, what we can do with this podcast is also grow. Like that's one of the things, isn't it? Like, it's all about reach sometimes. And I was talking to Lewis, like, with this show, to build our reach in the initial phases. It's good to have, you know, guests on such as yourself, because it's like kind of mutually beneficial as well, because the audience can, you know, look at this show, and if they like it, you know, they can tune into other ones. But they can also, if they hadn't known about you, they can follow your matches as well. So I think it works both ways. And when you combine it with what pro wrestling has done in MCW, where they have their own podcast as well, it makes most sense where media is going. It's that kind of podcast way where anyone who has a voice. I mean, I've got media experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean much. Like, you can just do podcasts without media experience, and I think it makes perfect sense, really. So well done on MCW for the podcast initiative there. It surprises me, though, they didn't start sooner. I would have thought. Do you know why that was?
I don't actually. We always do a wrap up show after every event. There's sort of I think like a 5 or 6 minute video of just like a summarization of what happened on that night. They throw a few clips of the matches, and then you've got the commentary team going through what happened in each sort of segment. And that was sort of the only sort of summarization that they had. And they had obviously their website, which had really good reviews on there too, of just articles. But as far as the podcast goes, they're definitely the first that I know of in Australia to have their own podcast for their own wrestling company. So it's very cool with what they're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And would they do that through like a studio, or would it be more kind of like a casual setup like this?
I don't actually know. I have, because they've only released the first one, so I don't know if it was done casually over the gimmicks that we're sort of using at the moment, or whether or not it was done in a studio. But it sounded great, so I definitely recommend just checking it out. And the first guest was Mikey J, who's part of the ownership team of Melbourne City Wrestling, and he's sort of been there since day one. So it's cool to see. If you go back to Melbourne City Wrestling from the beginning to where they are now, the leaps and bounds that we've grown, it's a very cool experience. Like, even just for me, myself, like, I think I helped out at, I think it was around like 13 to 14 Melbourne City Wrestling shows before I ever got on to one myself to wrestle. So it was just, I get to the venue, set up the ring, take it down, do whatever they needed me to do during the show, whether it's selling merch, doing tickets at the doors, or doing security that night, or whatever. But you sort of work your way into that spot, and then once you got that spot, just run with it as hard as you can, and take that opportunity for what it is.
And I guess there's that huge element of audience, isn't there? Like, not just in terms of podcast and wrestling, but like the live audience is essential when it comes to the energy you feed off from the crowd. I know Lewis is a real concert goer when it comes to music. You know, you mentioned like losing yourself, Nick. Like that's an important element, isn't it? Because when the energy goes up, you wouldn't, because of the adrenaline, the hits, the bruises, the knocks, they're not as impactful. Whereas if the crowd kind of was less noisy, would I be correct in saying that?
I mean, either way, you're going to feel it. I guess it's more what you do after it. Like, I could get a hit and it's a real stiff one, but the crowd are so into it, and they're like you're just fueling off that adrenaline that you just keep on going, and you're in that atmosphere and you're in the moment. Whereas if you just got that same hit just walking down the street to get a coffee, you probably wouldn't want to get back up. But obviously you would. So it's a different element. But yeah, like you definitely do fuel off that fire of the fans, whether they're booing you or cheering for you, they're reacting to you. And if they're reacting to you, you're doing your job.
Sweet.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, he's wrapped up about. I think off the top of my head, I can think of, because in Spain we have taekwondo. That's the closest thing to anything you guys mentioned over there.
No,
So
taekwondo is great. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe have you heard of it, or like is it more just like?
It's similar
I'm
to,
sure
similar to karate.
you're so open. Yeah, you're so open to everything that I'm like, oh, you might have heard Spain just, but at the end of the day, yeah, you just have to promote it. And taekwondo, we have. If we can do that with other martial arts sports, that would be great as well. It's all about reaching out.
What's the wrestling scene like in Spain?
I mean, WWE was huge as well here, and I got into it. Not sure if we've been before you came on. Like, so we went to Dila. Like, since when?
Yeah.
Have you gone? Because I think I remember seeing you. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I went down there, but before moving there, I did watch WWE myself, and it was massive as well. So, I think WWE was key to sort of inspire a lot of kids. Like, I want to be like them. And in Spain, we've done that with taekwondo really well. It's just we need to promote maybe other sort of martial art forms that you guys are at the moment, but maybe hopefully podcasts like this or your brand can inspire and get as far as Spain. That would be great, wouldn't it?
That'd be awesome, man. It's just about building that audience. The audience is definitely there. It's just about showing them that it's there and whether or not they can find it. So it has to be very accessible.
Yeah, I found it myself now, so you can you can trust me that I might expand it over here. It's like with footy, man. Like, you guys told me as soon as I came back, oh, you got to expand Australian footy now.
Yeah.
They always confuse it with American football. What can I do?
Wrong football.
Well, no, it's I'm really intrigued by everything that you've shared with us, man. So I'll have a look at myself now.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah, absolutely. And just on a before we wrap up, are you going to get the FIFA 18 game, Nick? Tomorrow it comes out in Australia.
I probably won't be getting it tomorrow, but at some point I'll definitely be getting it. Actually, now I think about it, it is a public holiday for us tomorrow, so I don't really have much on.
Well, because we have the AFL Grand Final on, so I don't have uni tomorrow. I have the day off.
Nice.
Don't remind me of the team that could have been in that grand final, Jono.
Ah,
All right. Well, hey, Geelong.
I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Geelong did a lot better than Essendon, which is Nick's team, as you can see behind him. And Essendon did a lot better than Collingwood, which is my team. They didn't even make the finals. So you guys have nothing to be complaining about.
Man, I'm just happy that Essendon got to make the finals. Going from bottom of the ladder last year and not having their sort of star players in the team, and then going to making the finals is a credit to themselves.
Absolutely. Who's our tips for the AFL Grand Final? Richmond.
Oh, Richmond all the way. You've got to be doing it. You've got to go for Richmond. It's the fairy tale again.
All right, Lewis, who are you for? Adelaide or Richmond?
Thing is, after they knocked us out, I'd probably want Richmond to win. But we did lose to Richmond in the qualifying final. So, and to be fair, it's quite hard to follow your sport from up above, as I like to call it. So I see Adelaide as favourites though, but it would be nice if Richmond won it, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, the home ground advantage is, even though Adelaide is a higher rank than Richmond on the AFL ladder,
that's why,
they're playing in Melbourne.
Yeah, you can never count Richmond out because of that, I think.
Like, look at the GWS game. They got over 90,000, in excess of 90,000 supporters. GWS only probably had 10,000, 5,000. And so all of those people are made up of Richmond supporters, and the atmosphere was electric. That just testifies that.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a Bulldogs story almost. Like,
it is.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
I'll have to wake up early for that, won't I? What time is it over there on Saturday?
The game.
Yeah.
I would say probably about 2:00 start. I'll double check for you.
What's that in Madrid, Lewis?
And come on. Oh, it is quite a special atmosphere, but that's why I think you guys should expand it. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out why. Well, you did manage to play a game in China, I believe, this year. I did hear about that. I think it would succeed in Ireland easily, because they have their Gaelic, and that's the closest thing you can compare it to Aussie football, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it would succeed massively. So again, it's all about the reach and promoting.
Maybe you could be the coach, Lewis, of the AFL team coming from Spain, the Madrid team from the AFL.
No, well, you can't think of. Yeah, I can't think off the top of my head of someone who would know as much about the sport as me over here. So I'd apply for that job.
I'm sure you got some Aussies that are over there enjoying the sunshine in Madrid that could probably throw on the boots and have a kick.
Maybe, yeah, early in the summer there might have been a few. I won't deny that, yeah. And Jono has to come over at some stage for this podcast. So you're welcome to come over as well too, man, anytime.
Oh, thank you. Spain's a huge on my bucket list.
Why is that?
I'm just I love traveling, man. I've got down there just in my room. I've got a world map. So basically, you have to scratch off, and it lights up the. So it's all gold until you scratch it off, and every country has a different color. So I'm trying to get that bucket list going. Just I really want to go through all the continents, and just the world is just so intriguing. Like, why be stuck just in your own country? In Australia, we're very isolated, so we can only sort of see Australia. And it's hard to sort of leave it, and we're so far away from everything else. So through wrestling, I've been able to not only increase my wrestling ability by going overseas and learn from others, but I've also been able to tick off those bucket list cities. Like this year, since I was 4 years old and I watched Home Alone 2 when they went to New York, that's been my favorite city ever since then. What was it, 17 years later, I get to go to the city, and I literally just walked around the streets all day, just with my jaw on the ground. It was just amazing. I was so flabbergasted. Got to tick off the bucket list in LA and Vegas as well.
Just stop.
But no, Europe's definitely a big one on my list.
Yeah, you would love it, and as I mentioned, we have to look on the world. Yeah, it is. It is. I won't deny that, and it's coming up for us now. So.
Yikes!
Oh, you guys get the summer. Oh well, it's your turn.
Well, we have the Australian Open coming up, mate. We were talking about the tennis before Nick came on. So the US Open's finished. We're looking forward to the Aussie Open.
Yeah.
And
oh man, so much going on.
Absolutely, but I'd really like to thank you, Nick, for coming on and being. So you're a first guest, and I reckon this couldn't have gone better. You're a fantastic guest to have, and I think one of the reasons why is because you're so passionate about what you're doing. So I just want to say, keep up the good work, really.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to be your first guest on the show. So thanks, guys. Can't thank you enough for having me on here. I will get my plugs out of the way. So if you do want to follow me on any of my social medias, it's at Real Nick Berry on Twitter, at Nick Berry4 on Instagram, or my Facebook page is Nick Berry Pro Wrestler. So I'm pretty frequent with posting up there, so you can see whatever I'm doing for each weekend coming up. And I just like to post funny things on there too. So whatever you guys want to follow me on, or even interact with me on there, I'm pretty quick with my replies to the fans as well.
You're quite a funny guy, Lewis. What kind of things do you post? You sometimes give me some very funny soccer posts that the Louis van Gaal and
I'm really, I'm really into that first take. You know that.
yeah.
It's another good podcast over in America.
Stephen
They're
A.
covering,
Smith. Yeah.
yeah, and they're talking about promoting and all that. Just to wrap it up, like they didn't talk about UFC, what 5, 10 years ago, and now they've incorporated it into their show. Like it's just a boom, like Nick said. So I think, yeah, I mean, and then they talk about, oh, it's hard to. I guess it depends on the sport, right? It's hard to stay at the top. But I'd say sometimes it's just as hard to start, to get that reach at the beginning, and once you do, I mean, it's all up from there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And everyone, give Nick Berry a follow. And in terms of this show, we've got a few more very exciting guests coming on. I don't want to reveal them because we've got them in the pipeline, but they'll be revealed closer to the date, and they're very good. So I won't reveal too much. Similar to Nick, we promise we'll have some very good guests. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Nick, for coming on again. Thank you, Lewis. And we'll see you on the next show.